Welcome to the Courageous Career Club and this career show. We've just resumed after a few months of a break, and today I have someone really incredible with us to talk about her experiences in Afghanistan. So we're joined by Kirsten Forbes. Kirsten works for the ICRC. I will let her tell you more about what she does and the sort of impact she's been having in Afghanistan over the last few months. Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about what you do at the moment for the ICRC in Afghanistan.
Yes, so I am currently the supply chain manager. I started the mission in April 2021. So, I won't get into too much logistics terms, but basically just making sure that all of our medical and non-medical stock gets there on time and in full, so that we can support the various programs in Afghanistan.
Yeah, this is really, really essential work. And I know that what we've experienced looking at the TV for the last month or two around Afghanistan and what you've experienced in the period of time from April till now, probably very different. I'd love to know a little bit about the journey and sort of your entry into Afghanistan, what that experience was like for you, what that transition was like for you, because I understand you were coming from Jordan, you were coming from an assignment from Jordan at the time.
Yep.
If you can tell us a little bit about what that transition and experience was like for you when you got into Afghanistan the first time.
So I really didn't have many expectations. I tried to keep my expectations low, let's just say. I knew that I was going into primarily a Muslim country, 99%. I knew that I had to dress differently. I knew that there was cultural differences, of course. But I really kind of went with low expectations so that when I went there, I really lived it fully and I made my own opinions and my own it just made my experience better, really. So I arrived in April 2021 and it's been great really ever since. I've loved my experience so far. Unfortunately, I'm not there with my team anymore, but I talk to them on a daily basis.
No, that's amazing. And tell us a little bit about sort of leading up to that moment last month when things sort of fell apart, to say the least. We were all watching on TV and sort of you knew that something was coming, right? It's like before Kabul fell, the news was starting to ramp up, the rhetoric was starting to ramp up, and we all felt that something was going to happen spectacularly. And then Kabul fell. But tell us a little bit about the lead up to that moment and how you experienced it from your side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think something that we often forget is Afghanistan has been in war for about 40 years. So these people are incredibly resilient, are incredibly, strong people. They're very, very beautiful people, very hospitable. And you could see how their moods and their mannerisms were slowly changing with the context, with the change in situation in the country. And that's what made me a little bit on edge and made me a little bit, I care a lot for them. And it was very, very hard to see them go through when the Americans left. The Americans left in July 4th, 2021, obviously this year. And it was kind of after that things really started to pick up and Taliban started advancing very quickly. So they gained momentum pretty much by the end of July. Oh no, sorry, it was about a couple of weeks before the fall of Kabul. They had gone Herat and Lashkargah, Kandahar, which are major cities in the country. And the day before Kabul fell, the Taliban, were 45 minutes away from Kabul. And that night, there were helicopters flying because they were trying to evacuate the people from the embassies. And most of the staff didn't sleep, so you came to work and they had just big bags under their eyes, very uncomfortable. They knew that they were just around the corner, and of course it happened. And we're very thankful that it was a peaceful day. So August 15th, when Kabul fell, was peaceful, and that there were, very little casualties, and that overall it was a peaceful transition of power.
Yeah, I can imagine that was a hugely significant moment for you and the team. Certainly, I know that you work with quite a number of people there. If you'd like to share with my listeners how many people you actually work with and how many people you support in terms of the aid work that you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Afghanistan, we're about 1,800 people. Most of our staff work in orthopedic centers. So we have 7 centers across the country. So huge amount of people there. And, I believe, and what we shared with our donors is that from August, we supported about 8,000 patients, war wounded patients, through one of our programs. And this is just one of the many programs that we have in Afghanistan.
It's really important to know exactly how much impact and how relevant the work is that aid organizations are doing in this country, even before the situation happened. Tell us a little bit about that time from, I think it was Sunday when Kabul fell, to sort of Wednesday when you were able to leave the country. And I mean, perhaps you didn't even want to leave. I mean, I don't know how complicated this emotional situation was for you. So tell us a little bit about the time between the falling of Kabul and your exit.
Yes, indeed. So Kabul fell on the 15th of August. And at that point, I had already told management, and I already told myself, I prepared myself that I was going to stay, and that I was going to stay with my team, and I was going to support them, and that whatever happens, I was going to be there. And what happened that week is there was just this explosion in the media of what was happening at the airports, with children going over the gates. There were people falling off planes. It was a scene of horror. It was terrible what was happening. And I got a lot of support from friends and family, from people on Facebook that I hadn't spoken to in years. And I was very, very appreciative for that, and for people worrying about me. But it also caused me an incredible amount of stress, because a lot of the questions were, of course, how are you doing? But when are you evacuating? Or have you been evacuated? And I wasn't planning on being evacuated. I had already developed my coping mechanisms. I had my pictures. I had my my daily calls with my friends, and I had ways to deal with the situation. But it came to a point where I had to decide if I'm going to stay with my staff and my people and stay on the ground, or care about the mental health of my family. And at that point, it just got too much for them to deal with. And they were also dealing with people contacting them, right? So my mother was getting calls from all over, and it made her very anxious. And I'm not putting the blame on my mother or on my partner, but I can't just think about myself. I have to think about others. So this is why it led me to the decision to leave on the next flight.
That must have been incredibly difficult to manage. And I can also imagine that being in the airport was not exactly anyone's idea of a safe place to be in that week. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely not. I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I knew that we saw a lot of the pictures coming out, a lot of the videos, but for some reason, I didn't think it was going to be actually that bad. I thought possibly we'd go through a different gate, or, unfortunately, ICRC, we do have, I don't know, we have discussions. Anyways, let's not go there. But what I wanted to say is I wasn't expected for it. And when I got to the gate, it was, I mean, I get emotional just even thinking about it. It's awful. You see people with just a diploma in their hand. You see children not flinching a second with the sight of tear gas or with a gunshot. They were just super calm. You have, women, children crying, and I'm really not exaggerating. That was the sight at the airport, and it felt very uncomfortable as a humanitarian, as a international international person, to be able to get on a flight that day. So that's really all I want to say. It was very uncomfortable leaving, and I'm still dealing with it to this day. Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that you would have built quite a bond with your team by that time. You've been there already for 4 months. Tell me a little bit about culturally what it was like to sort of transition into this new culture. Tell me a little bit about how you experienced that, and what you miss probably the most now that you're in Tashkent.
So, I mean, to prepare for the different culture, we get a briefing. I mean, we do get a nice form or a nice piece of paper where it's written all the main things you need to know, but it's really once you're in the context and once you're really living with the people that you experience things much differently. And that was actually a key thing for me, is to develop trust through cultural norms. So things like drinking tea in the morning for a good hour, like not an hour every morning, but like a good chunk of time to talk about their families or talk about what they did on the weekend, what books they're reading, whatever conversation. And then to sit on the floor when we're having lunch, to that's how they eat. That's how they eat their meals, or to eat jigar, which is liver. They love to eat that for breakfast. So I really enjoyed living through those different different customs. Another thing that I vividly remember is when someone passes away in Afghan culture, or in Islam really, is people get together. So at this time there was a lot of COVID cases. There was a huge spike in cases, probably around July, so a few months into my mission. So we're seeing a lot of, unfortunately, deaths in the compounds and family members. So frequently we would all get together and there was someone chanting the Quran, and it was just a really beautiful moment to, even if you didn't know that person, but to pay their respects. So something that we don't really do in Western culture. I mean, there's always my condolences and the text, but actually to reunite together and to commemorate this person is really beautiful.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about sort of your transition from traditional type of supply chain roles to humanitarian supply chain roles. What was the big takeaway, the big learning for you, having done this type of work for the last 2 years?
That's a very good question. I mean, my previous job was working for a fast-moving goods company in tobacco, and I look back at that experience with very fond memories, because it really prepared me to be very process-oriented, dealing with also different cultures. I mean, just in Southampton, where I was located in the UK, I don't remember how many, but it was definitely over 20 different nationalities. So it does prepare you to deal with different cultures and different people, different characters, and also managing a team. I was able to manage a team at that time, so to prepare me to lead with compassion and lead with integrity.
Yeah. I can imagine. And what do you think is sort of on the horizon for you as you look at your career, you look at what you've experienced, and you've seen sort of things that other people don't really have the opportunity to see firsthand? What do you think this will mean for the rest of your career and your outlook?
Definitely, I will always work with purpose. That is something that I am now very confident in saying. I was not sure at the time, but now it's very clear that I want to feel proud of the organization that I work for, and I want to be very much in line with my values. I want my values to be in line with the organization. So for me, that's something that will follow me forever. Now, what I'm going to do next, to be seen, and please follow me on LinkedIn. But yeah.
Congratulations on all that you've accomplished. I think the work that you've done to help countries that are really struggling at this moment, it's so important. The world is going through what I want to call a flux right now. And there's a lot of change happening. They call it the Great Resignation on LinkedIn and stuff like this. But I think there's really a movement to let's try to save as much as we can. Let's try to do the best we can, and let's try to give as much as we can instead of take as much as we can, which has kind of been the philosophy of the past few years. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. And
it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's been really wonderful to have this interview with you, and I look forward to our work together as we go through the rest of this year.
Me too. And I just want to end by just saying something very, very quick, is just to thank so many people for their support and their kind words through this difficult period in Afghanistan, and especially to my partner, who is literally my rock through my whole time, and of course to my parents and to you for your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Kirsten.